your name. The victims are someone else's game. Who knew this was your time? That your names would make headlines. Roseburg winds blow. Roseburg winds blow. We are weakened by your fall. By a pistol's aim, we all suffered loss. The guns that are meant to defend have turned on us again. Roseburg winds blow. Roseburg winds blow. It's time for things to change, yes it is. It's time to stop the rain, yes it is. Your families ask why. Their sad cries fill the sky. Oh, in this madness will you shine? In his bosom you abide. Yes, you do. Your voices will be heard. Every single word. Roseburg winds blow. Roseburg winds blow. Roseburg winds blow. Roseburg winds blow. Leading professionals to discuss why this is the moment to take a stand of historic significance for equality, for justice, and for a community that works for everybody. At the end of this series, we'll be holding our fundraising gala event, Removing the Thorns of Racism in the City of Roses, at the Lloyd Center Doubletree, October 5th, from 6 to 9 p.m. You can get your tickets by visiting www.pdxnaacp.org. Now, if you watched our show last week, you know we discussed an incident that happened involving a 34-year-old African-American man, Jermaine Massey, who was thrown out of the Doubletree Hotel, where he was a registered guest, for speaking on his cell phone in the hallway to his mother. Last week, we had as our guest Paul Peralta, general manager at the time of the incident, to discuss how this happened from the Doubletree's point of view and what is being done to prevent it from happening again. This week, we're going to revisit the issue, but from a very different perspective. Today, our guest is Jason Kafori, the lawyer representing Mr. Massey, and even though Jason has to be careful about what he can say regarding this case, I wanted to have him here to discuss why this moment matters, not only because it's an injustice done to one man, but also because it tells the story of what is happening in our community day in and day out. Now, we want to be clear that this isn't singling out the DoubleTree. It's about making sure that this incident and thousands others like it don't become normalized. Jason Confori, welcome to the show. But before we get into it, tell us a little bit about yourself and the kind of cases that you focus on as an attorney.
Thank you so much, Edie, for having us on. I work at the law firm of Confront and McDougall. My dad, Greg Confront, has been doing this for 45 plus years. His law partner, Mark McDougall.
Yes.
We have 6 attorneys, about 8 to 10 support staff. So we're a pretty, medium-sized law firm, and we do all sorts of injury cases, but we also focus and specialize on civil rights cases. Mm-hmm. We do police brutality when they beat up citizens if it's not justified. We do discrimination in public accommodation settings, like the Massey case. We have a lot of cases where people will be targeted, shopping while black type cases, yes. Going into a store, being followed, being customer serviced for no reason, yes. Being grabbed, detained, handcuffed, yes. Taken to the back sometimes, yes. For no reason. And what I've found in doing those cases is that people in Portland don't want to believe that there's racism.
Yes.
They really don't want to, and the jurors don't even want to believe it.
Well, because it's the whitest city in America.
Whitest major city in America, and we think of ourselves as this progressive hub. But the truth is, and you know this, there's a long history of underlying racism in our state and in our city.
Oh, my God.
And you see it just by talking to especially young African-American and especially young African-American men. Yes. You just ask them, how many times have you been pulled over? They got a laundry list of times where for doing nothing, they're just pulled over, just, cops checking on them, seeing what they're doing. White people just don't appreciate what an African-American person has to deal with in this city. And that's the kind of cases that we handle. We handle a lot of them. And this Massey case is obviously, a very high-profile example of discrimination in a public accommodation.
Your firm is very famous and infamous for taking on these kinds of cases, and we're certainly grateful that you are at the table. Thank you for being here today. Just so everyone is clear, you represent Jermaine Massey in this case, right?
Correct, yes.
And how did you get involved with this case, and why?
A funny story. So this incident, I believe, happened on December 23rd, just a couple days before Christmas. And Mr. Massey, first day he'd ever been in Portland, Oregon. Guy's from Baltimore, lives in Seattle. He was here for a concert. He was dressed, concert attire. He had a baggy sweatshirt and some jeans and colorful shoes. Came back at about 11 o'clock at night to the hotel where he was a registered guest there, the DoubleTree at Lloyd Center. And he got a message from his mom, and that was odd because it was 2 a.m. on the East Coast, so he knew something must be up.
Yeah.
So instead of going up to his room, he knew this must be urgent because his mom had been dealing with some health issues.
Right.
So he stepped into the lobby, the public lobby, and called his mom.
Right.
Next thing we know, security guard approaches him. What are you doing? Why are you here? Prove that you're staying here. And my client is basically like, look, I'm talking to my mom, I'm staying here, the guy said, well, what's your room number? He's like, I don't know my room number off the top of my head. Like, this is an important call. Next thing he knows, the manager's over there. Next thing they know, police are called. And suddenly he's dealing with 2 police officers. He's like, I'm a registered guest here. They're like, hotel doesn't care. They want you out of this place.
Now, all of this is his mother is still on the phone.
Yeah, he's still talking to his mom.
Wow.
Yeah. And so eventually, the police and the security guard march him to his room, watch him pack up the bags in the room that he had unpacked earlier before the concert, take him out of the hotel, and kick him out at about 12:30 at night to figure out what to do in Portland. Well, welcome to the City of Roses, Mr. Massey.
Yeah, so we're talking a couple of different instances here. We're talking now the police are enforcing racism.
Correct.
That's a whole nother show, and we're going to cue you up for that.
Yeah, and that it's a really critical case because we see this a lot, whether it's shop owners,
yes,
hotels, places where the public has a right to be there. They're, this private institution, but they're inviting the public, and so they have to follow the public accommodations law, which means you can't discriminate on basis of race or anything else. And these shopkeepers, store owners, hotel owners, they are using our taxpayer-funded dollars to have a private police, a public police officer do their private bidding by kicking people out. Wow. And that's really scary.
It is scary.
That's really scary. And that's a precedent that we cannot allow to happen. And frankly, yes, the police should have acted differently in this case. But as you said, that's a whole different story. Our main focus right now is on the DoubleTree, because the DoubleTree is the one who ordered the police to kick this man out.
Yeah, and when you have lawmen for hire,
correct,
it is really an interesting place. Now,
we don't want to abuse 911, right?
No.
I mean, that's not the whole point is to use 911 for real critical emergencies.
That's right. And by the way, I want to make this injection. We have a fine police force here in Oregon. We just need to tighten up the City of Roses, right?
And I will give the police credit. I've given them credit in some forums we've talked about. 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, we would get calls for Portland police beating people up all the time. I mean, multiple times a week we would get calls sometimes. Mm-hmm. We hardly ever get calls anymore in the last 2 or 3 years. So, I mean, the Portland police have done a pretty good job. I think it was when the DOJ came in and forced them to have to report every single use of force and to document and investigate it. I think that has changed the culture to some extent. And I think the police chief, the new police chief Outlaw, also has some credit is due there.
Yes, an outstanding performance by her. And the Albina Ministerial Alliance Coalition dealing with this as well has really made some excellent strides. What exactly is Jermaine suing for? And what is his injury claim? And what kind of damages, if we can speak on that?
Sure. So, he wasn't physically grabbed, detained, handcuffed. So we're not talking about the physical injuries. We're talking about the emotional stigma of realizing
he was mentally detained.
He was mentally detained.
Yes.
And it's the stigma of, no matter the fact that he's worked for the FBI, he's worked for the Department of Justice, he was working at Amazon at the time, he now works at Microsoft. He has done everything right. He's got a college degree. But yet he was treated differently solely because of the color of his skin. And that's a stigma. I asked him, I said, have you ever had anything like this happen before? He's like, look, I grew up in Baltimore. He's like, I mean, there's racism in Baltimore. He's like, I've never had anything even close to this happen to me.
Yeah.
In a place where I grew up, like Baltimore. So, he has been stigmatized. Yeah. And I think he now lives his life differently. He's a quiet, thoughtful guy. And I think he now, every time he goes into a place of public accommodation, this ugly, dark memory, comes back to him. And it's something he's going to live with for the rest of his life.
Yes. I reached out to him and I apologized for our city. This has happened to me. And I know for a fact that Jermaine is not the only black man that this thing has happened to, because it's happening everywhere. How widespread do you think these kinds of cases actually are? And do you think that they're getting more frequent, or are we just hearing about it more often?
I think each corporation has a different culture and a different set of rules. Mm-hmm. So, for example, Ross Dress for Less. I get a lot of those cases where people are being discriminated against. And I've seen a recent pattern where they will walk up to someone and say, we have you on videotape stealing before. When they don't. The person's never been in that store before. Yeah. And I think, so I think corporations go through tactics where they train people, hey, here's something you can do. If you don't like someone, you can kick them out by saying you got them on video stealing before. So I've seen that crop up recently. These things go in waves, but in general, it has been pretty consistent over my 10-year legal career. We're getting multiple calls a week of discrimination in Portland in places of public accommodation. So I think it's quite widespread. And I think, if you talk to an African-American person and just ask them what is their shopping experience, what is their walking around the downtown streets of Portland, and talk to a white person, you're going to have dramatically different views and realities.
What will it take to stop this kind of things from happening, do you think? And what responsibility do you think a corporation like Hilton has to do in this case like this to make sure that it never really happens again? And one of their hotels anywhere, or as a matter of fact, in any corporate arena that is a public venue for all people.
Well, yeah, it comes down to policies and procedures
Yes.
Of that hotel. Now, the Hilton has a lot of franchises. The DoubleTree is one of their franchises. They also have the Hampton Inns and several others. What we've seen after this Massey case is that we had a flood of people from around the country contact our law firm.
Wow.
And say, I had a very similar experience
Wow.
as an African American in a lobby of a Hilton franchise hotel.
Wow.
What that tells me is that the Hilton doesn't have some policy written down that says target African Americans in your lobby and kick them out. That would be racist and stupid for them to have that written down.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they have some sort of, or they at least had some sort of a policy, which said you as a security guard are authorized to walk around that hotel and ask people if they're staying in the hotel, and if not, ask them to leave. Mm-hmm. And having a policy where you're giving the individual security guard the power
Yes.
to walk up, you're not directly being racist, but what you're doing is you're allowing any people within your orbit who are racist to act racist. And
Yes.
so that's why I think this stuff permeates. And how do we fix it? Frankly, bringing lawsuits, bringing public attention, having it on video, like Mr. Madden. I mean, if he didn't have this on video, none of this would have blown up.
Yes.
So videotaping the incident. If this happens to you, I'll give you a couple bullet points you want to make sure you do out there as a citizen. Get everybody's name involved.
Yeah.
Go get their business cards after it happens. 2, if you got a camera, record it. Record it while it's happening. That's the best evidence, because it'll be a he said, she said if you don't have it on camera. 3, look for an independent witness.
Yeah.
Because everything will melt away and everybody moves on with life within minutes. So if something like this happens where you feel like you're being discriminated against, identify the witnesses, get the names of everybody involved, and call the police.
You've heard him.
Yeah.
What is it again? He gave us 3 wonderful points.
Get all the witnesses.
Yes.
The independent witnesses. Get all the business cards of everybody involved.
Yes.
And bust out your cell phone and document what happens.
Document
What happens. And frankly, if you're discriminated against, I've had some clients that have done this. They've walked outside of a store and said, that's wrong. I'm going to call 911 or non-emergency. And I'm gonna request an officer come and be here to investigate this. I think that's a great move, because that 911 call is going to be recorded, so you're going to have a recording of what happened, and you're going to have the police have to come and at least write up some sort of a police report about the incident. So it can't be, that person's saying this happened and blah blah blah.
Right.
Now you've documented it yourself. So those would be my 4 steps.
Yes, and you've created an electronic paper trail.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Now, criminal justice reform in Oregon looks like what?
Criminal justice reform, it's a big topic. In general, what I find is that the police, if they're being abusive to somebody, or a store wants somebody kicked out, what the police tend to do is they overcharge people. So they'll charge them with 3 or 4 or 5 crimes. And they're doing that so that the person may be facing years in jail, and they'll cop to one of the lesser pleas. And so what I would like to see is, from the district attorney level and the police level, I think real criminal justice reform starts with not overcharging people and not prosecuting stuff that, there's a lot better use of our time for the police than, trespassing someone and saying that they, violated a police order by taking one step too close to a police officer.
Yeah.
You see all these I see these cases all the time where they get 3, 4, 5 charges, all related to the same incident, just because the officer is more likely to get them to plead guilty to one of them.
Now, you mentioned the district attorney.
Yeah.
I don't think we understand how much power lies in the district attorney's office and in his briefcase.
Right. And there's an election coming up this
Yes.
for the DA, and it's an open. I think it's an open seat.
How do you think? What do you think the public's response needs to be to the district attorney's office to help level the field?
It's a great point. I feel that the district attorney in general kind of flies below the radar, right?
Yes.
We think of the governor, we think of the mayor, we think of even, high-profile judges, but nobody really focuses their attention on a district attorney. And I would like to see more community involvement, meetings with the district attorney, discussions about, looking at sentencing, for example.
Yes.
What sentences work, right?
Yes.
Does somebody with a low-level drug offense, do they really need to spend a long time behind bars, or should they be focused on treatment?
Yes.
And I think this election for the DA is going to be an important one. There's several good candidates. I met at least one of them, and I would like to see a more progressive, less focused on incarceration, more focused on healing. I mean, we're, as a country, we have more people incarcerated than any country in the world. Which is, I haven't looked at the stats recently, but it was over 2 million people behind bars.
Well, and those stats are consistent, and they have been for the last 100 years.
Right.
So we're not talking about anything new.
And this gets back to my sociology of prisons class I took back in college 20 years ago. But we've created a marketplace where we have private corporations that are doing a lot of our prison work, and so when you put a profit on putting people behind bars, that's going to lead to lobbying and push for harsher sentences, and it's a spiral downhill.
So you're really telling us that a bigger community engagement with the district attorney's office can make a huge difference.
I think so. Yeah, I really do.
I think what you're doing is you're driving me to have public forums with the district attorney.
I think we should, and I think you should have each of the DA candidates on and have talk to them about what are their ideas to help fix our broken criminal justice system.
You got it, and I want you there when I do that.
Let's do it.
Listen, what drives you to continue doing the work that you do?
Great question. We only represent people. We never represent corporations. We go up against powerful corporations all the time. And I love to help people that would be totally powerless if they didn't have an attorney. People call me and they say, God, I've been battling this insurance company and they're just screwing me over. I'm not getting anything out of it. And that's because powerful companies, insurance companies, police, they know that if you don't have a lawyer, you don't have a lot of power in the situation. And so my favorite part is helping empower people to take on big, powerful entities and to bring justice to the situation. Because without us, without an attorney, there wouldn't be any justice in a lot of cases. And that's the most gratifying part of my job.
Thurgood Marshall, one of our founding principals in the NAACP, a great lawyer, championed these kinds of cases. And we're so glad that people like the Kaforis, who have an impeccable history of fighting for injustice, we're glad that you're here. We've talked about several ways to change the narrative of fear and anger being the catalyst of being tough on crime. What is our biggest bullet? And in your opinion, as we move to our close of our time together, how do we change that narrative from your perspective and without fear and just be encouraged to move forward?
Well, I think that people need to understand that if they have an injustice, if they think something is not right, they shouldn't just slough it off and say, you know what, bad things happen to good people.
Yeah.
They should stand up for themselves. I'll tell you a story.
Yeah.
We had a wonderful African-American woman. I think she was probably in her mid-50s. Her name was Brenda Moaning. She went into an H&M store. She was only African-American in the store. And we had the video where the video camera followed her around for multiple minutes as the only person. She returned some items. She walked out of the store. She was grabbed, detained, taken to the back room. We went and took that case all the way to trial. The jury ended up awarding a little over $100,000 to her for what she'd had to deal with. And the jury didn't find discrimination, but they did find that it was a false arrest. Because as I said, the jurors don't want to believe we live in a discriminatory place. But what I learned from that case is that because we went all the way, because we went and got a jury verdict, because we got the publicity for it, we actually had the CEO of H&M have to make a public statement about how they were going to change their practices.
Wow.
All because this little, incident one time in Portland, Oregon, reached all the way to Scandinavia, where H&M is headquartered. So that's if I was to bring people a message from this, that would be two things. One, like Mr. Massey did, stay cool.
Yeah.
While it's happening. I can't tell you how many times people get outraged and they start cussing and getting pissed off in the moment. It ruins the case. It just does, So, like Mr. Massey did, stay cool, ask calm questions, get your camera out, record it, and then if you think this has happened to you, call us. We love helping people out, and I really think the only way to change corporate behavior is to actually bring these cases. I firmly believe that. I don't think corporations change unless you force them at their pocketbook level to change.
The worst sin in the world is to watch injustice and not say a word about it. Jason,
couldn't agree more.
I am so thrilled that you made the time to come down and speak to us. And we're thankful for you and your family for having such a long history of being freedom fighters.
Well, thank you, Edie, for having me on. It's been a pleasure. And stay tuned. I think there's going to be some more heating up on the Massey case here soon.
Well, we're anxious to see it. Listen, thank you for watching Removing the Thorns. We hope you're enjoying this show, and please know that we appreciate your support. You can extend this kind of support by attending the NAACP's annual Freedom Gala, Removing the Thorns of Racism in the City of Roses at the Lloyd Center Doubletree on October 5th from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Our special guest will be gospel legend singer Zella Jackson Price of the Say Amen Somebody fame. So purchase your tickets today by visiting www.pdxnaacp.org. These are dangerous times for our community. By attending the gala and supporting your local NAACP, you send a very clear message at a very low cost. United, we have the power to confront the forces of hate, and by using our collective voice, we will ensure that Portland is a city where all people of all colors and all orientations are safe and free and loved. Hi, I'm E.D. Mondaine, President of the NAACP. Thank you so much for watching. See you next Friday at 10 a.m. Until then, stay strong.
From every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last.
I know that we can do it. I know we can. I know we can. I know we can. I know we can. America, stand up and do it in His name, Lord. I know we can do it. Yes, we can. 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 I know we can. Yes, 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 we know we can do it. I know we can. No, we can. We can make it. Yes, we can. We can. Yes, we can. I know that we can make it. Yes, we can. Oh, yes, we can. Oh, yes, we can. Yes, we can. I know that we can. I know we can make it. We can make it.
We want you in our video. You use the link below. Join the anthem. We can do it.
guide me over, great Jehovah. Pilgrim day in this barren land. I am weak, but you are mighty, Lord.
Take me by the hand.
Me by the hand, Lord.
Take me by the hand.
I am a stranger, road is so long.